Arya Moretti stood frozen outside the church vestibule, her wedding dress suffocating her more than the August heat ever could. Through the crack in the door, she heard her future husband's voice, cold, detached, final. I never wanted her. This marriage is nothing but strategy. She's a pawn, nothing more. The words carved themselves into her chest, each one a small death. In 30 minutes, she would walk down that aisle. In 30 minutes, she would bind herself to a man who saw her as a transaction. But Arya Moretti didn't run. She adjusted her veil, lifted her chin, and made a choice that would change everything. Want to see how Arya survives a marriage built on betrayal and becomes the woman no one saw coming? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The church smelled like lilies and lies. Arya pressed her palm against the cool stone wall of the corridor, her other hand clutching the bouquet of white roses so tightly that thorns bit through the ribbon wrapping. Her wedding dress, custom-made Italian lace that had cost more than her family made in a year, felt like a beautiful cage. The August humidity crept through the old church walls, making the air thick and hard to breathe. But that wasn't what made her lungs constrict. It was the voices drifting through the partially open door of the groom's preparation room. You don't have to go through with this. That was Marco, Luca's cousin and underboss. His voice carried the rough edge of concern. There are other ways to secure the alliance with the Moretti family. The decision is made. Luca's voice was different from Marco's, controlled, measured, completely devoid of warmth. Arya had only met him twice before today. Once at the engagement announcement, where he'd shaken her hand like a business associate. Once at the rehearsal dinner, where he'd sat beside her in perfect silence, answering questions with clinical precision while his dark eyes remained unreadable. She's young, Luca, 22. She deserves better than a man who what? The temperature in Luca's voice dropped several degrees. Say it, Marco. A man who what? There was a pause. Arya should have walked away. Should have gone back to the bridal suite where her mother was probably panicking about her absence, and her sister Sophia was likely touching up her own makeup for the 10th time. But her feet stayed rooted to the ground. Her body turned toward that open door like a moth to a flame that would burn her alive. A man who doesn't love her, Marco said quietly. Who never will. Love. Luca laughed, but there was no humor in it. Love is a weakness, a liability. You think my father loved my mother? You think any of these marriages are about love? This is business. The Morettis need protection. We need legitimacy in the North Side operations. Arya Moretti is a means to an end. Each word landed like a physical blow. Arya's vision blurred at the edges, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps that she fought to control. She'd known, of course. This was an arranged marriage, a strategic alliance between two crime families. Her father had sat her down 3 months ago and explained it simply. The Morettis were struggling, the Vieiras were powerful, and this marriage would save her family from being swallowed by their enemies. But knowing something intellectually and hearing it spoken so coldly were two different things entirely. I never wanted her, Luca continued, his voice flat. I want that to be clear. This wasn't my choice any more than it was hers, but it's necessary, and I do what's necessary. She'll have everything she needs: security, money, status. In return, she plays the role of loyal wife and stays out of my way. That's the arrangement. Jesus, Luca. She's a pawn, Marco. A useful one, but a pawn nonetheless. The sooner everyone understands that, the better. Arya didn't wait to hear more. She turned and walked. Not ran, because running would mean she was broken, and she refused to be broken, back down the corridor toward the bridal suite. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with sharp, rhythmic precision. Her face remained perfectly composed. Inside her chest, something vital cracked and splintered, but she didn't let it show. The bridal suite exploded with activity when she entered. Her mother, Angela Moretti, rushed over with tears already streaming down her carefully made-up face. There you are. We were getting worried. It's almost time, baby. I'm ready, Arya said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, too calm, too steady. Sophia appeared at her elbow, beautiful in her pale pink bridesmaid dress, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist. You okay? You look pale. It's just hot. Her mother fussed with her veil while her Aunt Maria adjusted the train of her dress. Cousins and friends fluttered around her like nervous birds, their chatter washing over her in waves she barely registered. Through the window, she could see guests filing into the church. Men in expensive suits, women dripping with jewelry, the combined power of Chicago's underworld gathered to witness this union. "You're going to be so happy," her mother whispered, cupping Arya's face in her hands. "Luca Vieira is a good man, powerful. He'll take care of you." Arya wanted to laugh or scream. Instead, she smiled and nodded and let them lead her to the church entrance where her father waited. Salvatore Moretti looked older than his 53 years. The past few years of struggling to maintain territory, fighting off rivals, watching his power erode. It had carved lines into his face and put shadows under his eyes. But today he stood straight in his tuxedo, pride and relief mixing in his expression as he looked at his eldest daughter. "You look beautiful, Arya." He took her hand, his grip tight. "I know this isn't what you dreamed of when you were a little girl, but you're saving this family. You understand that, don't you?" "I understand, Papa." "Luca is a hard man, but he's fair. Respect him, support him, give him children, and you'll want for nothing." Children. The word made her stomach turn. She was supposed to have children with a man who saw her as a pawn, who had never wanted her, who would never love her. The organ music swelled, signaling the processional. Sophia and the other bridesmaids began their slow walk down the aisle. Through the open doors, Arya could see the church packed with people, all of them turning to watch. At the far end, Luca Vieira stood at the altar, tall and imposing in his black tuxedo. From this distance, he was devastatingly handsome. Dark hair perfectly styled, strong jaw, broad shoulders. The kind of man who turned heads when he entered a room. But Arya knew the truth now. Behind those sharp features and that powerful presence was a man with a heart of ice. A man who would never see her as anything more than a business transaction. "Ready?" her father asked. "No." The word screamed through her mind. "No, I'm not ready. I don't want this. I don't want him. I don't want a life where I'm nothing but a useful pawn in someone else's game." But running would destroy her family. Her father's enemies were circling, waiting for any sign of weakness. This marriage was the only thing standing between the Morettis and complete annihilation. If she fled now, left Luca Vieira standing at that altar, it would be seen as the ultimate disrespect. The Vieiras would withdraw their protection. Within months, maybe weeks, her family would be destroyed. So instead of running, Arya Moretti did what women in her world had always done. She lifted her chin, straightened her spine, and made her choice. "I'm ready." The walk down the aisle felt endless. Every eye in the church tracked her progress. She could feel their assessment, their judgment, their curiosity. What did they see? A young bride, beautiful and innocent, entering a powerful marriage? Or did some of them see the truth, a sacrifice on an altar of necessity? Luca watched her approach with an expression that gave away nothing. His dark eyes tracked her movement with the same intensity he probably used when assessing a business deal or an enemy's weakness. When she reached the altar, her father placed her hand in Luca's, and she felt the first real contact between them. His hand was large, warm, and completely impersonal. He held her hand the way someone might hold a business document, with care, but no tenderness. Father Michael began the ceremony. His voice droned through the traditional words, words that should have been sacred, but instead felt like chains being forged, link by link. Arya barely heard him. She was too focused on maintaining her composure, on not letting anyone see the devastation swirling inside her chest. "Do you, Luca Vieira, take Arya Moretti to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." His voice was clear, firm, emotionless. "Do you, Arya Moretti, take Luca Vieira to be your lawfully wedded husband?" This was it, her last chance to refuse, to run, to choose herself over duty. She looked up at Luca, meeting his dark eyes directly for the first time. They were beautiful eyes, deep brown, almost black, framed by thick lashes. But they were cold, so terribly cold. "I never wanted her. She's a pawn, nothing more." The words echoed in her mind. Fine. If he saw her as a pawn, she would be one. But pawns, in the right hands, could change the entire game. "I do." The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. Father Michael continued through the ceremony. Rings were exchanged, his band simple platinum, hers a stunning diamond that probably cost more than her father's house. Luca slid it onto her finger with clinical precision, no fumbling, no emotion. You may kiss the bride. This was the moment Arya had been dreading most. Luca stepped closer, one hand moving to her waist while the other tilted her chin up. For a heartbeat, his eyes met hers again, and she thought she saw something flicker in their depths. Hesitation, maybe, or regret. But then it was gone, and his lips pressed against hers in a kiss that was perfectly appropriate for their audience and completely devoid of feeling. It lasted 3 seconds, that was all. 3 seconds of contact before he pulled away and turned them both to face the congregation. Ladies and gentlemen, Father Michael announced, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Luca Vieira. Applause erupted. Arya's face felt frozen in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Beside her, Luca acknowledged the crowd with a slight nod, his hand still at her waist in a possessive gesture that meant nothing. They walked back down the aisle together, moving in perfect synchronization despite never having practiced. Outside, the Chicago summer assaulted them with heat and humidity. A fleet of black cars waited at the curb, surrounded by men in dark suits who scanned the street with professional wariness. Luca's hand remained at her back, guiding her toward the lead car. A bodyguard opened the door, and she slid inside, grateful for the blast of air conditioning. Luca followed, the door closing behind them with an expensive thud that sealed them into privacy. The driver pulled away from the curb, heading toward the reception venue. In the enclosed space, Arya was intensely aware of Luca beside her, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way he sat with perfect posture, the distance he maintained despite them being married mere minutes ago. The reception will last approximately 4 hours, he said, his tone businesslike. There will be photographs, dinner, the traditional dances. I expect you to smile and play your part convincingly. Appearances matter. Arya turned to look at him, really look at him. Is that all I am to you? An appearance? Something shifted in his expression, so brief she almost missed it. Then his face returned to its usual impassive mask. You're my wife. That's what you are. Your wife, who you never wanted, your pawn. The words hung in the air between them. Luca's jaw tightened, the first real reaction she'd gotten from him. You were listening. I was in the hallway. You weren't exactly quiet. For a long moment, he said nothing. His hands rested on his thighs, relaxed but somehow still conveying tension. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. What you heard was the truth. This marriage is strategic. I won't apologize for being honest about that. With Marco, not with me. Would you have preferred I lie to you? I would have preferred to know what I was walking into before I walked down that aisle. You knew exactly what you were walking into. An arranged marriage, a business alliance. Did you really expect romance? Arya felt something sharp and painful twist in her chest. No, I expected respect. I expected to be treated like a person, not a commodity. Luca turned to face her fully then, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch despite her anger. You will be treated with every respect due to my wife. You'll have access to unlimited funds, a home most people only dream of, protection from every threat. What more do you want? To be seen, she said quietly. To be valued as more than just a strategic asset. Value is earned, Arya, not given. The words stung, but she refused to let him see that. Instead, she turned away, looking out the window at the Chicago streets passing by. Then I'll earn it. And when I do, maybe you'll realize that pawns can become queens. She felt rather than saw his surprise. Good. Let him underestimate her. Let him think she was just another helpless girl forced into a marriage she didn't want. She'd show him, show all of them, that Arya Moretti, now Arya Vieira, was nobody's pawn. The reception was held at the Sinclair, one of Chicago's most prestigious hotels. The ballroom had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Thousands of white roses, crystal chandeliers, silk draping, and candlelight that cast everything in a romantic glow that mocked the reality of the situation. The next 4 hours were a carefully choreographed performance. Arya smiled until her face hurt, accepted congratulations from people she'd never met, and played the role of blushing bride to perfection. Luca remained at her side, The attentive groom, his hand often at her waist or back in gestures that looked possessive and protective but felt hollow. During their first dance, she was hyper-aware of every point of contact, his hand at her waist, her hand in his, the way he led her through the waltz with practiced ease. "You dance well," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "My mother insisted on lessons. She said a woman in our world needs to know how to move in society." Smart woman. She also told me that marriage is what you make of it, that two people can choose to build something together, even if they didn't choose each other initially. Luca's hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Your mother is an optimist, and you're a realist. I'm a survivor. There's a difference." The song ended, and immediately they were swept into other obligations. Father-daughter dance, mother-son dance, toasts that ranged from heartfelt to drunken, dinner that Arya barely tasted, cake cutting where they fed each other bites while cameras flashed, his eyes meeting hers with nothing in them but calculation. As the evening wore on, Arya found herself watching the other couples on the dance floor. Some looked genuinely happy, lost in each other. Others wore the same mask she did, smiling faces over hollow hearts. This was their world, where love was a luxury few could afford. Sophia found her during a break in the festivities, pulling her aside near the restrooms. Her sister's face was flushed from champagne and dancing, her lipstick slightly smeared. "You doing okay?" Sophia asked, her eyes searching Arya's face with the concern only a sister could have. "I'm fine." "Liar, I know that look. That's your 'I'm holding it together by sheer force of will' look." Despite everything, Arya felt a smile tug at her lips. "When did you get so observant?" "I've had 20 years to study you." Sophia took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Arya, it's not too late. If you want to leave, if you really don't want this, we'll figure something out. We'll run. And let Papa's enemies destroy him? Let them take everything from Mom and you and everyone we love? No." Arya squeezed back, then released her sister's hand. "I made my choice, Soph. I'm seeing it through." "But are you going to be okay?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Arya thought about the cold man waiting for her on the other side of that door. The man who saw her as nothing but a strategic asset. The man she'd promised to love, honor, and cherish, knowing he'd never feel the same. "I'll survive," she said finally. "Morettis are survivors. Remember?" Sophia hugged her tightly, and for a moment Arya let herself feel young and scared and overwhelmed. Then she straightened her spine, fixed her lipstick, and went back to her wedding. By 11 o'clock, the party was in full swing, but Arya was exhausted. The emotional toll of the day had drained her more than the physical demands. She stood at the edge of the dance floor, watching guests enjoy themselves, and wondered how much longer she'd have to maintain this facade. "It's time." Luca's voice came from behind her, making her jump slightly. "Time for what?" "To leave. We've fulfilled our obligations. The car is waiting." "Right. Because this day wasn't over yet. There was still the wedding night to endure. Another tradition, another expectation." They said their goodbyes, accepting final congratulations and well wishes. Arya hugged her mother one last time, feeling Angela's tears against her neck. "Be happy, baby," her mother whispered. "Please be happy." "I'll try, Mama." The car ride to Luca's house, her house now, she supposed, took 20 minutes. They drove north into one of Chicago's most exclusive neighborhoods, where old money and new power resided behind high walls and tight security. When they pulled through iron gates and up a long driveway, Arya got her first look at where she'd be living. The house was beautiful, in a cold, modern way, all clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and expensive materials. It looked like something from an architecture magazine, perfectly designed and completely impersonal. A woman in her 50s met them at the door. Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, who smiled warmly and welcomed Arya to her new home. She gave them a brief tour of the main floor, living room, dining room, kitchen that looked like it had never been used, office with floor-to-ceiling bookcases. "Your rooms are upstairs," Mrs. Chen said, leading them up a curved staircase. "Master bedroom here, Mr. Vieira's study there, and several guest rooms." "Rooms?" Plural. Arya noticed that immediately. Mrs. Chen opened a door to reveal a stunning bedroom suite. King-size bed, sitting area, walk-in closet, already filled with clothes Arya had never seen before. Bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people. Everything was done in soft neutrals, elegant and expensive. I took the liberty of stocking your closet with essentials, Mrs. Chen explained. Luca provided your sizes. If anything doesn't fit or isn't to your taste, we can have it changed immediately. It's beautiful, thank you. Mrs. Chen nodded and excused herself, leaving Arya and Luca alone in the bedroom. Arya's heart started beating faster. This was it, the wedding night. She'd known it was coming, had tried to prepare herself mentally, but now that the moment was here, she felt completely unprepared. Luca walked to the window, looking out at the grounds below. His back was to her, his posture rigid. This is your room. The closet and bathroom are fully stocked. If you need anything, Mrs. Chen can help you. My room? Arya's voice came out smaller than she intended. Where will you sleep? In my room, down the hall. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt something uncomfortably close to hurt. I see. I have no intention of forcing you into anything you don't want, Arya. Despite what you think of me, I'm not a monster. Just a man who sees me as a pawn. He turned then, and in the dim light of the bedroom, his face looked harder than ever. You want honesty? Fine. I don't know how to be what you want. I don't know how to be a real husband. All I know is business, strategy, survival. So yes, I'll keep my distance. It's better for both of us. Better or easier? Both. He moved toward the door and panic suddenly flared in Arya's chest. Not because she wanted him to stay, but because his leaving felt like confirmation of every terrible thing she'd heard him say earlier, that she meant nothing, that this marriage was nothing. Luca. He paused at the door, not turning around. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I didn't want this either, but I'm here. I showed up. I said my vows. The least you could do is acknowledge that I'm trying. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then without turning, he spoke. Get some rest, Arya. Tomorrow we start learning how to live with each other. He left, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that made Arya's chest ache. She stood alone in her beautiful bedroom in her beautiful house, still wearing her wedding dress, and finally let herself feel the full weight of what she'd done. She'd married a man who didn't want her, who would never love her, who saw her as nothing but a strategic necessity. But she'd also survived. She'd held her head high, maintained her dignity, and refused to break. And tomorrow, when the sun rose on her first day as Arya Vieira, she'd do it again. And the day after that. And the day after that. Because if Luca thought she was just a pawn, just a means to an end, then he was in for a surprise. Arya Moretti hadn't been raised to be anyone's pawn. She'd been raised to survive, to adapt, to overcome, and she was going to do exactly that. She unzipped her wedding dress, letting the expensive lace pool at her feet. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Hair still perfectly styled, makeup still flawless, but eyes haunted by truths she wished she'd never heard. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow she'd start building the life she could actually live. But tonight, alone in a stranger's house, wearing someone else's ring, Arya Vieira let herself cry for the girl she used to be and the future she'd just surrendered. The first morning of Arya's marriage, she woke to silence. Not the comfortable silence of home, where she'd grown up hearing her mother's footsteps in the kitchen and Sophia's off-key singing in the shower. This was the heavy silence of a house too large, too empty, too carefully designed to muffle any sign of actual life. She lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. Sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains, painting everything in shades of gold that should have been beautiful, but instead felt wrong. Everything about this place felt wrong. The expensive sheets that smelled like detergent instead of home, the temperature-controlled air that never changed, the absence of any sound that might indicate another human being existed in this building. Her phone showed 7:43 a.m. 14 hours married. 14 hours of being Arya Vieira, and she still didn't know what that meant. She forced herself out of bed, padding barefoot to the bathroom. The marble was cold against her feet. In the mirror, she looked exactly like someone who'd spent half the night crying. Puffy eyes, blotchy skin, the kind of exhaustion that went bone deep. She splashed water on her face, trying to restore some semblance of normalcy. The closet was a study in someone else's idea of who she should be. Designer dresses hung in neat rows, organized by color. Shoes that probably cost more than her old car lined the shelves. Everything was beautiful, expensive, and completely impersonal. She pulled on jeans and a simple white t-shirt, her own clothes from home, and felt marginally more like herself. Downstairs, she found Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The older woman looked up with a warm smile that Arya immediately distrusted. In her experience, people in Luca's world didn't smile unless they wanted something. "Good morning, Mrs. Vieira. Did you sleep well?" Mrs. Vieira, the name still felt foreign, like shoes that didn't fit right. "Well enough. Is Luca here?" "Mr. Vieira left for the office at 6. He said to tell you he'd be home by 7 this evening." Mrs. Chen set a plate on the island. Eggs, toast, fruit arranged artfully. "He wanted you to be comfortable. If you need anything at all, you just need to ask." "What I need is to not be treated like a guest in my own house," Arya said, then immediately regretted the sharpness in her tone. None of this was Mrs. Chen's fault. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "You meant every word, and that's fine." Mrs. Chen's smile became more genuine. "You're adjusting. That takes time. But for what it's worth, I've worked for Mr. Vieira for 8 years, and I've never seen him bring anyone into this house. You being here means something, even if he won't say it." Arya doubted that. She picked at her breakfast, her appetite non-existent. "How long have you known him?" "Since he bought this place. He was 24 then, just taking over from his father, angry at the world, determined to prove something." Mrs. Chen poured coffee into a mug, set it in front of Arya. "He's changed since then, gotten harder maybe, but also more controlled, more careful." "Careful," Arya repeated. That was one word for it. "Does he ever actually live here, or does he just use it as a place to sleep between business deals?" "He works a lot, but that's not my place to judge." Mrs. Chen paused, seeming to weigh her words. "What I will say is that everything in your closet, everything in your bathroom, all of it, he chose it himself. Spent hours going through catalogs, making sure it was right. A man who doesn't care wouldn't do that." The information sat uncomfortably in Arya's chest. She didn't want to think of Luca carefully selecting clothes for her, trying to anticipate what she might like. It was easier to think of him as cold, uncaring, exactly what she'd heard in his words yesterday. She spent the day exploring the house, trying to make it feel less like a museum. It didn't work. Every room was perfectly designed, professionally decorated, completely sterile. There were no family photos, no personal touches, nothing that indicated an actual person lived here. The books in the study were organized alphabetically, but showed no signs of being read. The kitchen had every appliance imaginable, but looked barely used. Even the living room, with its comfortable furniture and impressive entertainment system, felt like a showroom. By noon, Arya was ready to scream from boredom and isolation. She tried calling Sophia, but her sister didn't answer, probably still recovering from the wedding. Her mother picked up on the first ring. "Arya, how are you, baby? How's the house? How's married life?" The questions came rapid fire, full of desperate hope. Arya could picture her mother pacing the kitchen back home, needing reassurance that she'd done the right thing by letting her daughter marry a stranger. "The house is beautiful, Mama. Everything's fine." "And Luca? Is he treating you well?" "He's at work. I haven't seen him since last night." A pause. "Well, that's normal. Men in his position work long hours. You'll adjust." Would she? Arya wasn't sure, but she made comforting noises until her mother seemed satisfied, then ended the call feeling more alone than before. The afternoon dragged. She tried reading but couldn't focus. Tried watching TV but nothing held her attention. Finally, she went back upstairs to the gym. Mrs. Chen had shown her a fully equipped space that looked as unused as everything else, and spent an hour on the treadmill, running until her legs burned and her lungs screamed, trying to outrun the restlessness eating at her. Luca arrived home at exactly 7 o'clock, like he'd said. Arya heard the front door open from where she sat in the living room, pretending to read a magazine. His footsteps were measured, controlled, the sound of a man who never rushed. He appeared in the doorway, still wearing his suit, looking exactly as composed as he had yesterday. His eyes swept over her, assessing, before he nodded once. "Arya." "Luca." She set down the magazine. "How was work?" "Fine." He loosened his tie slightly. "Did you settle in?" "As much as one can settle into a house that feels like a hotel." Something flickered across his face, annoyance maybe, or resignation. "It takes time. Does it? Or does it stay this cold and empty forever? If you want to redecorate, go ahead. I don't care what you do with it. The dismissal in his voice sparked anger in her chest. That's your answer to everything, isn't it? You don't care about the house, about me, about any of this. I care about maintaining appearances and fulfilling obligations. Beyond that, what I feel or don't feel is irrelevant. How do you live like that? How do you just turn everything off? He studied her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Practice and necessity. You'll learn. I don't want to learn. I don't want to become whatever this is. She gestured at him, at the space between them, at the whole sterile existence he'd built. I want to feel something, even if it's anger or sadness or anything other than this numbness. Then feel it, he said flatly. Feel whatever you want. Just do it quietly and don't make it my problem. The words stung more than they should have. Arya stood, needing to move, needing to do something with the frustration coursing through her. You know what? Fine. We'll live separate lives under one roof. We'll maintain appearances and fulfill obligations. But don't expect me to pretend this is normal, and don't expect me to become like you. I don't expect anything from you except discretion and cooperation. Everything else is your choice. He left the room, heading upstairs to his own space, and Arya was alone again. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw something. Instead, she called Sophia back, finally catching her sister. Oh, thank God, Sophia said immediately. I've been worried sick. How are you? What's the house like? What's he like when it's just the two of you? Distant, cold, exactly what I expected and somehow worse. Arya moved to the window, looking out at the manicured grounds. Soph, I don't know if I can do this for the rest of my life. Then don't. Come home. We'll figure something else out. There is nothing else, you know that. Arya pressed her forehead against the glass. Tell me about something normal. Anything. I need to remember what normal feels like. They talked for an hour about nothing important. Sophia's job at the boutique, their cousin's upcoming birthday, neighborhood gossip. Normal things. Human things. When they hung up, Arya felt marginally better, but still fundamentally alone. The pattern repeated itself over the next week. Luca left early, came home late, spoke to her only when necessary. They ate dinner together twice, sitting at opposite ends of the long dining table, making stilted conversation about nothing meaningful. He asked if she needed anything. She said no. He nodded and returned to his study or his room, leaving her alone in the beautiful, empty house. Arya tried to build some kind of life. She explored the neighborhood, though she quickly realized she couldn't go anywhere without one of Luca's men following at a distance. She started working out regularly, pushing herself hard because physical exhaustion was better than the mental kind. She read, she called her family, she tried to make friends with Mrs. Chen, who remained kind but professionally distant. But mostly, she felt like a ghost haunting someone else's life. 8 days after the wedding, she woke to find a note on the kitchen counter in Luca's precise handwriting. There's a charity gala tonight, black tie. Car leaves at 7. Be ready. That was it. No please, no explanation of what the event was for or why she needed to attend. Just instructions, like she was an employee rather than his wife. Arya crumpled the note, then smoothed it out again. Fine. If he wanted her to play the role, she'd play it, but on her terms. She spent the day getting ready with the kind of attention she'd normally reserve for important family events. Hair salon, manicure. She went through the closet, rejecting the conservative dresses that screamed mob wife, until she found something that felt more like her. A deep emerald gown with a low back and a slit that showed leg when she moved. Dramatic, bold, nothing like the obedient pawn he expected. When she came downstairs at 6:55, she found Luca waiting in the foyer, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked up as she descended the stairs, and for the first time since their wedding, she saw genuine reaction cross his face. His eyes widened fractionally, his movement stilling completely as he tracked her approach. Is this appropriate? She asked, knowing it was. Knowing it was more than appropriate, it was stunning. He recovered quickly, his expression smoothing back into neutrality. It's fine. Just fine? You look presentable. She wanted to hit him. Instead, she smiled sweetly. How kind of you to say so. The gala was being held at the Blackstone, another historic Chicago venue full of old money and older secrets. As their car pulled up to the entrance, Arya could see other guests arriving, women dripping in jewels, men in expensive tuxedos, the city's elite gathered for whatever cause was fashionable this month. Luca's hand moved to her back as they entered, the gesture possessive and practiced. To anyone watching, they looked like what they were supposed to be, a powerful couple, united, formidable. Arya played her part perfectly, smiling and nodding as Luca introduced her to various business associates and their wives. "This is my wife, Arya." Wife. The word sounded strange coming from him, like a role he was still learning to play. The event dragged. Arya made small talk with women who smiled too much and said too little. She drank champagne and picked at overpriced appetizers and tried not to check her watch too obviously. Luca remained at her side, attentive in a way that looked real but felt hollow. "You're good at this," she said during a brief moment when they were alone. "At what?" "Pretending. Anyone watching us would think we're actually happy." His jaw tightened. "That's the point." "Does it ever bother you, living like this?" "Like what?" "Like everything's a performance, like nothing's real." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. "Everything's real, Arya. The threats are real. The enemies are real. The consequences of showing weakness are real. What's not real is the fairy tale you apparently expected." Before she could respond, a man approached, older, distinguished, with sharp eyes that assessed her like she was livestock. "Luca, good to see you. And this must be the new bride I've heard so much about." "Arya, this is Vincent Cardelli. Vinny, my wife." Something in the way Luca said the name made Arya's instincts prickle. This man was important, dangerous. She extended her hand and Cardelli took it, holding on just a fraction too long. "Pleasure. Your father spoke highly of you." "Did he?" Arya reclaimed her hand. "That's surprising, considering he usually saves the compliments for Sophia." Cardelli laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Beauty and wit. Luca, you chose well." "I tend to," Luca said, his hand moving to Arya's waist in a gesture that should have felt protective but mostly felt like branding. They talked business, carefully coded language about operations and territories that Arya was clearly meant to ignore. She did, letting her attention drift to the other guests until she caught Cardelli watching her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "You'll have to bring her to dinner sometime," Cardelli said. "My wife would love to meet her." "We'll see," Luca said neutrally. After Cardelli left, Arya turned to Luca. "He makes my skin crawl." "Good. That means your instincts work. Stay away from him." "Who is he?" "Someone who used to be an ally and might be becoming a problem." Luca's hand dropped from her waist. "I need to speak with some people. Stay where I can see you." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her alone in a room full of strangers. Arya grabbed another champagne flute from a passing waiter and drifted toward the windows, needing space from the crowd. "First time?" She turned to find a woman about her age, dark-skinned and beautiful, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than most people made in a month. "Is it that obvious?" The woman smiled. "Only to someone who's been there. I'm Jasmine, wife of Marcus Hayes. You're Luca Vieira's new bride, right, Arya?" "That's me." "Welcome to the club." Jasmine raised her glass in a mock toast. "The wives of dangerous men, doomed to spend evenings like this pretending we enjoy watching our husbands make deals that might get them killed." The bluntness startled a laugh out of Arya. "That's one way to put it." "It's the only way to put it. Trust me, I've been at this for 3 years. The sooner you accept what this life is, the easier it gets." Jasmine studied her. "How long has it been for you?" 8 days? "Oh, honey, you're still in shock. It gets better. Or at least, you get better at pretending it does." They talked for 20 minutes, and Arya felt something close to relief. Here was someone who understood, who'd walked this path before. Jasmine was funny and sharp, and refreshingly honest about the realities of their world. "The key," Jasmine said, "is finding something that's yours, something he can't touch. For me, it's my charity work. For other women, it's their kids, their businesses, their lovers." "Lovers? Girl, you think these marriages are about fidelity? They're about power and alliances. What you do for comfort is your business, as long as you're discreet." Jasmine paused. Although Luca Vieira doesn't strike me as the type who'd tolerate that. He's got a reputation for being possessive. He barely talks to me. I doubt he'd notice. He'd notice. Jasmine's expression turned serious. I've watched him tonight. He knows exactly where you are at all times. That's not indifference, honey. That's something else. Before Arya could process that, Luca appeared at her elbow. We're leaving. His tone brooked no argument. Arya said goodbye to Jasmine, accepting her new friend's phone number with a promise to call, then let Luca guide her toward the exit. What happened? She asked once they were in the car. Nothing that concerns you. If it affects when we leave, it concerns me. He looked at her, and in the dim light of the car, his face was harder than usual. Cardelli made a comment. I decided it was time to go. What kind of comment? The kind that doesn't get repeated. They drove in silence for several minutes. Arya watched the city lights blur past, processing the evening. Jasmine's words echoed in her head. He knows exactly where you are at all times. Why did you marry me? The question came out before she could stop it. Really, I know it was strategic, but you could have chosen anyone for this alliance. Why me specifically? Luca's hands tightened on his knees. Your father offered. I accepted. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Frustration bubbled up in her chest. Do you know how exhausting this is? Every conversation is like pulling teeth. You won't tell me anything real, won't let me in, even an inch. How are we supposed to live like this? We live by maintaining boundaries, by not expecting things that aren't possible. Things like honesty, like basic human connection. Things like intimacy that would complicate an arrangement that works better simple. The word intimacy hung between them, charged with implications. Arya felt her face heat. I'm not asking for intimacy. I'm asking to be treated like a person instead of a possession. I've never treated you like a possession. You've never treated me like anything. You ignore me, avoid me, act like I'm furniture in your house. The only time you touch me is when we're in public and you need to maintain appearances. Would you prefer I touch you in private? The question came out low, almost dangerous. Arya's heart rate kicked up, her body responding to the shift in his tone before her brain caught up. I'd prefer you acknowledge that I exist. I know you exist, Arya. Believe me, I'm very aware of your existence. Something in the way he said it made her breath catch. She turned to look at him, really look at him, and found him staring straight ahead, jaw clenched, shoulders rigid. He looked like a man barely holding on to control. Then why? Because awareness doesn't change reality. You're here because of an arrangement. I'm here because of obligation. The sooner we both accept that, the easier this becomes. They pulled through the gates of the house, the conversation dying as they entered their shared space. Luca got out first, not waiting to open her door or offer his hand. Arya followed, her heels clicking on the driveway, her mind spinning with confusion and frustration. Inside, Luca headed straight for his study. I have work to do. It's almost midnight. Then go to bed. The dismissal in his tone snapped something in her. You know what? Fine. Keep hiding. Keep pretending that distance makes you strong, but it doesn't. It just makes you alone. She turned and headed upstairs, not waiting for his response. In her room, she stripped off the dress and kicked off the heels, climbing into bed still wearing her jewelry because she was too tired and frustrated to care. But sleep didn't come. She lay there, replaying the evening, trying to understand the man she'd married, the way he'd looked at her when she came down the stairs, the way his hand had tightened at her waist when Cardelli got too close, the way he'd said he was aware of her existence, like it cost him something to admit it. Around 2 a.m, she finally drifted off, exhausted by circular thoughts that led nowhere. She woke to chaos. The sound of raised voices pulled her from sleep, sharp, urgent, male. Her clock showed 4:47 a.m. She grabbed the robe from her chair and hurried into the hallway, heart pounding. Luca's voice came from downstairs, tight with controlled fury. How many? 3 dead, 5 injured. The warehouse is gone. That was Marco. She recognized his voice from the wedding. They hit us hard, Luca. This wasn't a warning. This was a message. Arya crept to the landing, staying in the shadows. From her vantage point, she could see into the foyer where Luca stood surrounded by 4 men, all of them armed, all of them looking grim. Cardelli, Luca said flatly. Has to be. The timing's too perfect. He was testing you at the gala, and when you didn't back down, he struck. Then we strike back twice as hard. Luca, he's got the Santoro family backing him now. If we escalate, this becomes a full war. Then war it is. Luca's voice was ice. He crossed the line. He killed my people. There's no walking that back. What about her? One of the other men nodded toward the stairs. If this gets bloody, she's a target. Luca went completely still, a different kind of tension radiating from him. Double the security. No one gets near this house. No one gets near her. She's a liability, Luca. Cardelli knows she's your weak. Finish that sentence and I'll finish you. The threat in Luca's voice made everyone freeze. She's my wife. That makes her untouchable. Anyone who goes near her dies. Make sure that message gets delivered personally. The silence that followed felt heavy. Then Marco spoke carefully. Understood. We'll handle it. Handle it quickly. I want eyes on Cardelli and everyone in his organization. I want to know every move before he makes it. And I want options for retaliation ready by morning. The men dispersed, leaving Luca alone in the foyer. He stood there for a long moment, head bowed, shoulders tight. Then he looked up, directly at where Arya was hiding in the shadows. You might as well come down. Her breath caught. Slowly, she descended the stairs, pulling her robe tighter around herself. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in Luca's face, the fury barely contained beneath his controlled exterior. How much did you hear? He asked. Enough? Someone attacked your operation. People died. Yes. Because of what happened at the gala. Because you stood up to Cardelli. Partially. This has been building for a while. He ran a hand through his hair, the first uncontrolled gesture she'd seen from him. You should go back to bed. This doesn't concern you. You just told your men I'm a target. That concerns me pretty directly. You're not a target. You're protected. Because I'm your wife. Your weak spot. His eyes flashed. You heard that part. All of it. She moved closer, lowering her voice. Is it true? Am I your weakness? You're my responsibility. There's a difference. Is there? For a moment, something raw showed in his face. Something vulnerable and scared and human. Then he locked it down, the mask sliding back into place. Go to bed, Arya. The security will be increased starting now. You won't notice them, but they'll be there. And you? What will you do? What I always do. Handle it. He started to walk away, heading back to his study. Arya didn't think, just acted. She caught his arm, stopping him. The contact made him freeze, every muscle in his body going rigid. You don't have to do this alone, she said quietly. Whatever you think, whatever arrangement this is, I'm here. And I'm not weak. I can handle more than you think. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. In his eyes, she saw conflict, the desire to believe her warring with ingrained habit. You can't handle what's coming. Trust me. Then teach me. Why? So you can become like me? Hard and cold and empty? So I can survive what's coming. So I can be a partner instead of a burden. She released his arm but didn't step back. You said value is earned, remember? Let me earn it. For a long moment, he simply stared at her. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, he said, You already have. Before she could respond, he was gone, disappearing into his study and closing the door behind him. Arya stood alone in the foyer, her heart racing, his words echoing in her head. You already have. Sleep became impossible after that. Arya went back to her room but couldn't shake the image of Luca standing in that foyer, exhausted and furious and trying so hard to maintain control, or the way he'd looked at her when she'd offered to help, like he wanted to believe her but didn't know how. By the time dawn broke, she'd made a decision. If Luca wouldn't let her in willingly, she'd find another way. She dressed carefully, jeans, a simple sweater, nothing that screamed trying too hard, and went downstairs. The house was different in daylight after last night's chaos. She noticed things she'd missed before. Security cameras in every corner, reinforced windows, the way certain walls looked thicker than they should be. This wasn't just a house. It was a fortress. Mrs. Chen was in the kitchen, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned not to ask questions about 4 a.m. meetings with armed men. Coffee? She offered. Please. Arya slid onto a bar stool. Mrs. Chen, can I ask you something? Of course. Last night, when those men came, does that happen often? Mrs. Chen's hands stilled briefly on the coffee pot, then resumed pouring. Often enough that I know to stay out of the way and keep my mouth shut. I'm not asking you to betray any confidences. I just want to understand what I'm living in. The older woman set the mug in front of Arya, studying her face. You're different from what I expected. How so? Most women in your position would pretend not to notice, would be happy to stay ignorant as long as the credit cards work and the lifestyle continues. Mrs. Chen leaned against the counter. But you want to know, you want to understand. Is that wrong? It's dangerous. Knowledge in this world comes with a price. I'm already paying the price, Arya said quietly. I might as well get something for it. Mrs. Chen nodded slowly, respect flickering in her eyes. Mr. Vieira runs a large operation, legitimate businesses on the surface, other things underneath. He's careful, controlled, rarely makes mistakes. But he has enemies. Men who want what he has, or who resent his power, or who simply see him as an obstacle. Like Cardelli. You were listening last night. Wouldn't you? A small smile. Yes. Vincent Cardelli used to be an ally. But alliances shift. He's been making moves, gathering support, testing boundaries. Last night was him showing his hand. And Luca will retaliate. Mr. Vieira always retaliates. It's how he maintains power. Show weakness once, and you're finished in this world. Arya wrapped her hands around the warm mug, processing this. The men said I'm a liability, a weak spot. Mrs. Chen's expression softened. You're his wife. That makes you valuable to his enemies as leverage. But I barely know him. We don't... She stopped, not sure how to explain the distance between them without sounding pathetic. We're not close. His enemies don't know that. All they see is that he married you, which in their world means you matter. Mrs. Chen paused. And for what it's worth, I think you matter more than you realize. I've never seen him rattle the way he did when that man suggested you were a weakness. He nearly killed him on the spot. The information settled uncomfortably in Arya's chest. She didn't want to matter to Luca, didn't want to care that he'd defended her. It was easier when the lines were clear, when she could stay angry at him for seeing her as a pawn. The study door opened, and Luca emerged, still wearing yesterday's clothes, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. He stopped when he saw Arya in the kitchen, something unreadable crossing his expression. You're up early, he said. So are you. Or did you ever actually sleep? No? He moved to the coffee pot, pouring himself a cup with mechanical precision. We have a situation that requires attention. The attack. His eyes cut to Mrs. Chen, who immediately busied herself with dishes. Yes. What are you going to do about it? Nothing that concerns you. He drank the coffee like it was medicine, his movements sharp with barely contained tension. Arya stood, walking around the island to face him directly. Stop saying that. Stop acting like I'm not part of this. Those men last night said I'm a target now. That concerns me. You're protected. By what? Guards I'll never see? Cameras I'm supposed to pretend don't exist? She lowered her voice. Luca, I heard what you said, that I've already earned value. What did you mean by that? For a moment, she thought he might actually answer. His jaw worked, his fingers tight around the coffee mug, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Then Marco appeared in the doorway, and the moment shattered. We need to move, Marco said. Cardelli's people are already spreading word about last night. If we don't respond soon, we look weak. Luca's face shuttered closed, all emotion draining away. 5 minutes. Marco left. Luca set down his mug and turned to Arya. I need to go. Stay in the house today. The security team has orders to keep you safe. How long will you be gone? As long as it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He started to walk past her, then paused. Without looking at her, he said quietly, Last night, when you said you could handle more than I think, don't test that theory today. Please. The please surprised her. Before she could respond, he was gone, Marco falling into step beside him as they headed for the garage. Arya heard car doors, engines. The sound of her husband driving away to do things she wasn't supposed to know about. She spent the morning restless and angry. Mrs. Chen worked around her, offering food that Arya barely touched. Around 11, her phone rang. Sophia. Thank God you answered. I've been trying Mama all morning and she won't pick up. Have you talked to her? Not since yesterday. Why? What's wrong? I don't know. She seemed weird at breakfast, distracted. And Papa's been locked in his office with Uncle Tony for hours. Sophia's voice dropped. Something's happening, Arya. Something big. Dread coiled in Arya's stomach. Have you heard anything about an attack last night on one of Luca's properties? An attack? Jesus, no. Are you okay? Did something happen to you? I'm fine. It wasn't here. It was a warehouse or something. People died. Arya moved to the window, looking out at the grounds where she now knew armed guards patrolled invisible perimeters. Sophia, I think we're in the middle of something bad. What kind of bad? The kind where people start shooting and asking questions later. Her sister went quiet. Then carefully. Arya, maybe you should come home. Just for a few days until things settle down. I can't. Leaving now would make Luca look weak. It would make things worse. Since when do you care about making Luca look weak? Good question. Arya didn't have a good answer. I just know that running won't help. They talked for a few more minutes before Sophia had to go. After hanging up, Arya felt more alone than ever. She wandered the house, looking for something to do, some way to feel useful instead of trapped. In Luca's study, she found herself drawn to the bookshelves. Unlike the decorative volumes in the living room, these books showed signs of use. Worn spines, dog-eared pages, notes in margins. She pulled one out at random and found herself holding a book on military strategy, half the pages marked with Luca's precise handwriting. You shouldn't be in here. She spun to find a man in the doorway, late 30s, muscular, with the watchful eyes of someone trained to spot threats. One of the security team, she assumed. It's my house too, she said, keeping her voice level despite her racing heart. Mr. Vieira's study is private. Mr. Vieira is my husband. I think I'm allowed to look at his books. The man's jaw tightened. Ma'am, I have orders to keep you safe. That includes keeping you out of places you shouldn't be. Whose orders? Luca's? Yes. Arya set the book back on the shelf, anger flaring. Let me guess. He said to keep me comfortable and contained. Make sure the little wife doesn't get curious or cause problems. He said to keep you safe. That's what I'm doing. By treating me like a prisoner? By treating you like someone people want to hurt. The man's expression softened slightly. Ma'am, I know this is hard, but Mr. Vieira's enemies don't play nice. If they got their hands on you, they'd use you to destroy him. That's not paranoia. That's reality. The bluntness of it hit her like cold water. What's your name? Torres? Well, Torres, I appreciate the honesty, but I'm going stir-crazy in this house. And if I don't do something productive soon, I'm going to lose my mind. Torres studied her for a moment. What did you do before? Before you got married? I worked at my father's restaurant, managed the books, handled inventory, dealt with suppliers. Nothing glamorous, but it was mine. You miss it. I miss having a purpose. I miss feeling like I mattered for something other than my last name or who I married. Torres seemed to consider this. Then, pulling out his phone, he made a call. Boss? Yeah, she's fine. But we might have a situation. The kind that needs your attention. A pause. No, she's not hurt. She's bored. And from what I can tell, boredom might be more dangerous than Cardelli right now. Despite everything, Arya felt a small smile tug at her lips. Luca called 20 minutes later. Arya saw his name on her phone screen and considered not answering, but curiosity won out. Torres says you're causing trouble, he said without preamble. Torres says I'm bored. There's a difference. You're supposed to stay put and stay safe. I am staying put. I'm just not staying quiet about hating it. She moved to the window, watching clouds gather over the city. Luca, you can't keep me locked in here like some princess in a tower. I'm going to go insane. A long pause. In the background, she heard voices, movement. Wherever he wasn't alone. What do you want? I want to feel useful. I want something to do that matters. Staying alive matters. Existing isn't the same as living. Another pause, longer this time. Then, so quietly, she almost missed it. I know. The admission shocked her silent. Before she could respond, he continued. I'll be home by 6. We'll talk then. He hung up. Arya stared at her phone, trying to parse what had just happened. Had Luca actually agreed to discuss this? To treat her like someone whose opinion mattered? The afternoon dragged. Around 4, Jasmine called, her voice tight with concern. Girl, are you okay? Marcus just told me about the attack last night. He said 3 of Luca's people are dead and Cardelli's claiming responsibility. I'm fine, scared, but fine. You need to be more than fine right now. This is escalating fast. Marcus says if Luca retaliates the way everyone expects, we're looking at a full-scale war. Jasmine hesitated. Arya, you should probably stay away from windows and crowds and anywhere that isn't completely locked down. That's not exactly helping with the scared part. I know, but you need to know what you're dealing with. These men don't play games. They don't send warnings. They just act, and people die. Jasmine's voice softened. I'm not trying to terrify you. I'm trying to keep you alive. I appreciate that. Really. If you need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. Okay? Day or night. After they hung up, Arya felt the weight of reality settling over her. This wasn't a movie or a story. This was her life now, and people were actually dying. The distance she'd felt from Luca's world was an illusion. She was in it, whether she wanted to be or not. Luca arrived home at 5:47, earlier than promised. Arya heard the garage door, the sound of footsteps, voices in the foyer. She came downstairs to find him talking with Marco and 2 other men, all of them looking grim. Needs to be decisive, Marco was saying. If we hit back soft, they'll see it as weakness. If we hit back too hard, we start something we can't control. Luca's voice was tired. There's a middle ground. There's no middle ground with Cardelli. You know that. Luca noticed Arya on the stairs. His expression shifted, some of the hardness leaving his face. Give us a minute, he said to the others. Marco shot Arya a look she couldn't quite read before leaving with the others. Then it was just her and Luca in the foyer, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. You came home early, she said. I said we'd talk. He loosened his tie, exhaustion evident in every movement. Come on. He led her to his study, closing the door behind them. In the privacy of the room, he seemed less controlled, more human. He poured himself a drink from the bar cart, scotch, neat, and gestured to ask if she wanted one. She shook her head. You said you want to feel useful, he started, that you want something to do that matters. Yes. Why? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean, why? Why do you care? You could easily live here, spend money, enjoy the benefits of being my wife without taking on any of the risks or responsibilities. Most people in your position would choose that. I'm not most people. No, you're not. He took a drink, his eyes never leaving her face. When I married you, I expected someone who'd stay in the background, who'd be content with the surface level of this life. You're not that person. Is that a problem? I don't know yet. He set down the glass. The truth is, you were right earlier, about being part of this whether either of us likes it. Cardelli will come after you eventually, not because of who you are, but because of who you're connected to. Fear flickered through her chest. How do you know? Because it's what I do. Hit the enemy where they're vulnerable. And you, Arya, you're my vulnerability now. The honesty in his voice startled her. This was the most real he'd been since their wedding, the mask finally cracking enough to show the man underneath. So what do we do? She asked. We prepare you. Teach you how to survive in this world, how to spot threats, how to defend yourself, how to navigate the politics without getting destroyed. He moved closer, and she could see the conflict in his eyes. But once we start down that path, there's no going back. You'll know things you can't unknow, see things you can't unsee. The innocence you still have, it'll be gone. I haven't been innocent since I overheard you call me a pawn on my wedding day. He flinched like she'd struck him. I shouldn't have said that. But you did. And you meant it. I meant it then. Things are different now. How? How are they different? He looked at her for a long moment, something raw and uncertain in his expression. Because you're not who I thought you were. Because you stood in that foyer at 4 in the morning and offered to help instead of running scared. Because every assumption I made about you has been wrong. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Arya's heart hammered in her chest. Luca! A phone rang, shattering the moment. Luca pulled out his cell, his expression darkening as he read the screen. I have to take this. He answered in clipped sentences, his posture going rigid. Arya watched his face change, watched whatever fragile honesty they'd been building evaporate under the weight of whatever he was hearing. When? He demanded. How many? A pause. Lock it down. No one in or out until I get there. He ended the call, already moving toward the door. What happened? One of our clubs was hit. Cardelli's people walked in and shot up the place. We have casualties. He grabbed his jacket from the chair. I have to go. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You just said I need to learn this world. Let me start now. There are bodies, Arya. Blood. This isn't a classroom. I know, but if I'm going to survive here, I need to understand what survival actually means. She grabbed her own jacket. I'm coming. For a second, she thought he'd refuse. Then something shifted in his face. Resignation, maybe, or respect. Stay close to me. Do exactly what I say. And if I tell you to leave, you leave immediately. Understood? Understood. The drive took 15 minutes. Marco met them at the club, an upscale place called Eclipse that Arya had never been to. Police cars blocked the street, their lights painting everything in red and blue. Luca spoke briefly with the officers, who clearly knew him, then led Arya inside. The scene was worse than she'd imagined. Shattered glass crunched under her feet, tables were overturned, and blood, dark and still spreading, pooled on the expensive flooring. Emergency responders worked on the wounded while others covered the dead with sheets. Arya's stomach turned, but she forced herself to keep looking, to not turn away. 2 dead, Marco reported, appearing at Luca's side. 5 injured, 2 critical. They came in through the back, hit the private rooms first, then shot their way out through the main floor. Security footage. Already pulled. We've got clear faces on 3 of them. Cardelli's people, no question. Luca's jaw clenched. Show me. They moved to the security office, Arya following in their wake. On the monitors, she watched the attack unfold. Men with guns entering quickly, shooting without hesitation, people screaming and running. The violence of it, the casual way those men had taken lives, made her feel sick. We need to respond tonight, Marco said. Every hour we wait makes us look weaker. We respond smart, not fast. Luca studied the footage, his expression cold and calculating. Who was in the private rooms when they hit? Antonio Greco and his crew. They were having a meeting. Greco survived? Yeah, he's at Mercy Hospital right now, stable but pissed. Luca nodded slowly, and Arya could see him putting pieces together. This wasn't random. Cardelli wanted Greco dead specifically. The rest was just cover. You think Greco was the real target? I know he was. He's been brokering a deal with the Santoros. If that deal goes through, it shifts the entire power balance on the south side. Luca turned away from the monitors. Cardelli doesn't want that deal to happen. He killed 2 of my people to send that message. So what's our play? We protect Greco and make sure the deal closes. And then, Luca's voice went cold. We make Cardelli pay for every drop of blood spilled here tonight. They spent another hour at the club, Luca talking to witnesses and coordinating with his people. Arya stayed quiet, observing. Watching how Luca commanded respect without raising his voice, how people deferred to him instinctively, how even in the aftermath of violence he remained controlled and focused. This was the man she'd married. Not the distant stranger who barely spoke to her at home, but this. A leader, a strategist, someone who carried the weight of other people's lives on his shoulders. On the drive home, she finally asked the question burning in her mind. Does it ever get easier, seeing that? No. His hands gripped the steering wheel. The day it gets easier is the day you've lost something important. But you seem so calm, so controlled. That's survival. Show fear, show weakness, and you're done. But that doesn't mean I don't feel it. He glanced at her. You held up better than I expected. I was terrified. You were brave. There's a difference. They pulled through the gates of the house into the safety of their fortress. But safety felt different now that Arya had seen what it was protecting them from. Inside, Mrs. Chen had dinner waiting, but neither of them had much appetite. "You should eat something," Luca said. "So should you." They sat at the dining table, picking at food, the silence between them different than before, less hostile, more weighted with shared experience. "This morning," Arya said finally, "you told me I'd earned value. What did you mean?" Luca set down his fork, considering his words. "Most people in arranged marriages like ours just accept the situation. They stay surface level, maintain appearances, never try to dig deeper. You didn't do that. From day one, you challenged me, called me out, refused to be what I expected. That makes me valuable. It makes you real. In a world full of lies and performances, you're honest, even when it costs you." He paused. "When Torres called today and said you were bored, I realized something. You're not going to let me keep you at arm's length. You're going to force me to actually deal with the fact that I'm married to someone who gives a damn. And that scares you, terrifies me." The admission was quiet, raw. "I've spent years building walls, Arya, keeping everyone at a distance because getting close means vulnerability, and vulnerability gets you killed in this world. But you walked into my life and started dismantling those walls whether I wanted you to or not." Her breath caught. "Luca, I'm not good at this," he continued, "at letting people in, at trusting, at any of the things that make a real marriage work. But I'm trying to figure it out because the alternative, keeping you locked away, treating you like a possession I need to protect, that's not sustainable, and it's not fair to you." "So what are you saying?" He met her eyes directly. "I'm saying maybe we try to make this real. Not a transaction or an arrangement, an actual partnership." The words settled between them, heavy with possibility and risk. Arya wanted to believe him, wanted to think that maybe they could build something genuine from this forced beginning, but she'd been hurt before, had heard his true feelings on their wedding day. "How do I know you mean it?" she asked quietly. "How do I know this isn't just another strategy?" "You don't. All I can do is show you." He stood, moving around the table to where she sat. "Starting now, starting with honesty. You asked what I'm going to do about Cardelli. The truth is, I'm going to destroy him, not just retaliate, completely eliminate him as a threat, and it's going to get ugly." "How ugly?" "People will die. Probably people on both sides. It'll be violent and messy, and there's no guarantee we come out on top." His voice was steady, unflinching. "That's the reality of this life. That's what you're asking to be part of." Arya stood to face him, forcing herself to meet his eyes without flinching. "Then teach me how to survive it." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, respect, maybe the first glimmer of actual trust. "Okay," he said. "We start tomorrow. No more keeping you in the dark. No more pretending you're not capable of handling the truth. And tonight? Tonight we figure out how to be in the same room without it being a battlefield." It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't even really romantic. But it was honest and real and more than Arya had dared hope for. She nodded, accepting the terms of this new phase of their relationship. They ended up in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch like two people learning how to be around each other for the first time. Luca turned on music, jazz, something instrumental, and surprisingly soft. They talked in fits and starts, carefully, like people navigating a minefield. She told him about her life before the wedding. He told her about taking over from his father at 24, unprepared and overwhelmed. She admitted she'd always wanted to travel. He confessed he'd never actually left the country because leaving meant losing control. Small truths, carefully shared, building blocks towards something that might eventually resemble trust. Around midnight, exhaustion finally caught up with both of them. Luca walked her upstairs, pausing outside her bedroom door. "Thank you," he said, "for coming tonight, for not falling apart when you saw that. Thank you for letting me." He nodded, then surprised her by reaching out and touching her face, just briefly, his fingers gentle against her cheek. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be intense." He walked away toward his own room, and Arya went inside, closing the door behind her. She stood there for a long moment, her hand pressed against where he'd touched her face, something unfamiliar and dangerous blooming in her chest. Hope, the most dangerous thing of all. The next morning started differently. Arya woke to find a note slipped under her door, written in Luca's precise handwriting. Breakfast at 8, dress for training. L. Training. The word carried weight, promise, danger. She showered quickly and dressed in workout clothes, her heart beating faster than it should. When she came downstairs, she found Luca already in the kitchen, wearing athletic pants and a t-shirt that showed arms she'd never really noticed before. He looked younger like this, less untouchable. "Coffee first," he said, sliding a mug across the counter. "Then we start." "Start with what?" "Teaching you how not to be a victim." They ate quickly, the tension between them different than before, anticipatory. When they finished, he led her to a part of the house she'd never seen, a basement level that required a key code to access. The door opened onto a fully equipped gym, but not the kind designed for casual workouts. This had shooting ranges, defensive equipment, training mats, a serious space for serious preparation. Torres was already there, along with a woman Arya hadn't met before. Late 20s, athletic build, blonde hair pulled back severely. "This is Riley," Luca said. "Former military, current head of personal security. She's going to teach you the basics." Riley extended her hand, her grip firm. "Mrs. Vieira, I understand you want to learn how to protect yourself." "I need to learn." "Good. Need is better than want. Keeps you focused." Riley gestured to the mats. "We'll start with awareness training. Most people who get hurt in this world don't see it coming. We're going to change that." The next 3 hours were brutal. Riley taught her how to scan a room for exits, how to identify threats, how to position herself in public spaces, how to read body language, spot weapons, notice when someone was paying too much attention. Luca watched from the side, occasionally adding comments, his presence a constant weight in her peripheral vision. "Again," Riley said after Arya had failed to spot a concealed weapon for the third time. "You're looking at faces. Stop. Look at hands, posture, where their weight is distributed." Arya tried again, forcing herself to see differently. This time she caught it, the slight bulge under Torres's jacket, the way he stood with his right side angled away. "Better," Riley said. "You're learning." By noon, Arya's head was pounding from concentration. Luca called a break, leading her back upstairs. Mrs. Chen had lunch ready, but Arya was too wired to eat much. "You did well," Luca said. "I failed half the exercises." "You showed up. That's more than most people would do." He drank water, studying her. "Riley says you have good instincts. You just need to trust them." "It's hard to trust instincts I didn't know I had." "That's what training does. Makes you conscious of things you already knew subconsciously." He set down the glass. "This afternoon, we move to physical defense. It's going to be harder." He wasn't wrong. Riley spent the next 2 hours teaching Arya how to break holds, where to strike to cause maximum damage, how to use her smaller size as an advantage rather than a weakness. Every move hurt. Every fall left new bruises. But Arya refused to quit, driven by something deeper than pride. "You're thinking too much," Riley said after Arya had hesitated on a strike. "Your brain is saying don't hurt him because Torres is on your side. But in a real situation, you can't hesitate. You strike first, strike hard, and worry about morality later." "I don't know if I can do that." "You can. You just haven't had to yet." Riley's voice softened slightly. "Mrs. Vieira, in our world, being too nice gets you killed. I'm not saying become cruel. I'm saying learn when to flip that switch." Oh, Luca stepped onto the mat then. Unexpected. "Show her," he said to Riley. "Boss, what the—" "Show her what happens when you hesitate." Riley nodded, understanding passing between them. She moved into position across from Arya. "Come at me. Any way you want." Arya threw a punch, telegraphing it like Riley had told her not to. Riley caught her wrist, twisted, "Sanamai," twisted, and suddenly Arya was on her back with Riley's knee on her chest and a training knife at her throat. The whole thing took 2 seconds. "That's hesitation," Riley said, standing and offering Arya a hand up. "You pulled the punch because you didn't want to hurt me. In a real fight, that gets you killed." "Again," Luca said. His voice was hard. "And this time, Arya, pretend she's someone who wants to hurt you, someone who wants to use you to get to me. Don't think. Just act." Arya's hands were shaking. She took a breath, centered herself, and tried again. This time when she moved, she put real force behind it. Riley blocked, countered, but Arya anticipated the move and shifted her weight. The strike still didn't land clean, but it was closer. Better, Luca said. Again. They went again. And again. Each time Arya got a little faster, a little more willing to commit. By the time Riley called the session, Arya was exhausted and covered in bruises, but something had shifted inside her. She'd felt it. That moment when instinct took over and she stopped thinking about being nice. In the locker room, Riley handed her ice packs. You're tougher than you look. I don't feel tough. I feel like I got hit by a truck. That's how you know you're learning. Riley smiled slightly. For what it's worth, most people quit after the first day. You didn't. That means something. Upstairs, Arya found Luca in his study, on the phone. He gestured for her to wait, finishing his conversation in terse sentences before hanging up. Cardelli made another move, he said without preamble. Hit one of our supply lines. Nothing major, but it's escalating. What are you going to do? Meet with the other families tomorrow. Try to build a coalition against him before this spirals into all-out war. He stood, moving to the window. I need you to come with me. To a meeting with other crime families? To show unity. To demonstrate that I'm not weak, that my house is in order, that attacking my interests means facing both of us. He turned to face her. I'm asking, Arya, not ordering. You can say no. She should say no. This was diving into the deep end before she'd learned to swim, but the alternative was staying locked in this house, safe and useless, while Luca fought battles alone. I'll come, she said. But you need to prepare me. Tell me who these people are, what they want, how to navigate the politics. Relief flickered across his face. We have tonight. I'll tell you everything you need to know. They ordered food from a restaurant Luca trusted and spread out in the study with files and photographs. Luca walked her through the power structure of Chicago's underworld, the families, their territories, their alliances and feuds. The Santoros controlled the ports. The Russos had the North Side gambling. The Hayes family ran various legitimate businesses that laundered money for half the city. And threading through it all were complex webs of loyalty, debt, and grudges that went back generations. Vincent Cardelli used to work for the Santoros, Luca explained, pointing to a photo of the man who'd made Arya's skin crawl at the gala. But 5 years ago, he broke away and started building his own operation. He's smart, ruthless, and he wants what I have. Why you specifically? Because I control the most profitable territories. Because I have connections to the legitimate business world that he doesn't. Because he sees me as the biggest obstacle to his expansion. Luca's voice went flat. And because I killed his brother. Arya's breath caught. What? 6 years ago. Marco Cardelli came at me with a knife over a deal gone bad. It was self-defense, but Vincent's never forgiven it. Everything that's happening now, it's been building since then. So this is personal for him. Everything in this world is personal eventually. Luca closed the file. Tomorrow, we're meeting with representatives from 4 families. The Santoros, the Russos, the Hayes family, and the Costellos. I'm going to propose an alliance against Cardelli. Some will agree immediately. Others will need convincing. What do you need me to do? Stand beside me. Look strong. Let them see that you're not just some fragile thing they can use against me. He paused. And if anyone says something that crosses a line, don't react. Stay calm. We'll deal with it later. What kind of line? The kind where men in this world sometimes forget that wives are people and not property. His jaw tightened. If that happens, I'll handle it. But I need you to trust me to handle it my way, in my time. Can you do that? Arya thought about the training, about learning when to flip the switch. I can try. They worked until midnight, Luca drilling her on names and faces until she could identify each major player and their key associates. When exhaustion finally won out, he walked her upstairs again. At her door, he paused. Thank you, he said, for agreeing to this, for not running when you saw what my life actually looks like. I'm terrified, she admitted, of the meeting, of Cardelli, of all of it. Good. Fear keeps you alert. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture so gentle it made her chest ache. But you're stronger than your fear. I saw that today. His hand lingered, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, the distance reasserting itself. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow's going to be intense." The meeting was held at a neutral location, a private room in a restaurant owned by someone with ties to all the families. Arya dressed carefully in a tailored black suit that Riley had helped her select, something that projected power without trying too hard. When she came downstairs, Luca was waiting in a three-piece suit that made him look every inch the dangerous man he was. "Ready?" he asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The corner of his mouth lifted. "That's becoming your signature move." The drive took 20 minutes. Marco met them outside, falling into step beside Luca as they entered. Inside, the restaurant was closed to regular customers, security posted at every entrance. They were led to a private room where 4 men already waited, each with their own security detail. Arya recognized them from the files. Anthony Santoro, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, head of the port operations. David Russo, younger but no less dangerous, who controlled gambling. Marcus Hayes, Jasmine's husband, whose legitimate businesses were fronts for extensive money laundering. And Thomas Costello, an old-school operator who'd been in the game longer than anyone. All of them looked up as Luca entered, their gazes sweeping over him before landing on Arya. She felt their assessment like a physical touch, but she kept her expression neutral, her posture confident. "Gentlemen," Luca said, his hand at Arya's back, "thank you for coming. You all know my wife, Arya." Nods all around. Marcus smiled at her, genuine warmth in his expression. "Good to see you again, Arya. Jasmine speaks highly of you." "She speaks highly of you too," Arya replied, grateful for the friendly face. "Shall we sit?" Santoro gestured to the table. "I assume we're here because of the Cardelli situation." They settled into chairs, Arya beside Luca, acutely aware of how every movement was being watched and judged. Luca laid out the situation with clinical precision. Cardelli's attacks, the escalation, the threat he posed not just to the Vieira operations, but to the stability of their entire network. "He's not going to stop with me," Luca said. "He wants to reorganize the whole power structure. That means everyone in this room has a target on their back." "Maybe," Russo said. "Or maybe he just wants what you have. If we stay neutral, we might avoid the crossfire." "There is no neutral in a war. You're either with me or you're in his way." "Sounds like you're asking us to fight your battle." "I'm asking you to recognize that it's all our battle." Luca's voice stayed level. "Cardelli hit my warehouse. He shot up my club. He's testing boundaries, seeing who'll push back. If none of us do, he'll keep pushing until he owns everything." Santoro leaned back, studying Luca. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A coordinated response. We pool resources, share intelligence, present a united front. Cardelli has the advantage of momentum right now. We take that away by showing him he's outnumbered. And if he backs down, he won't, which means this ends with him either dead or completely broken." The word hung in the air. Thomas Costello, who'd been quiet until now, finally spoke. "You're talking about elimination, not compromise, not territory negotiation. You want him gone." "Yes. That's a big ask, Luca, especially for those of us who don't have personal grudges against the man. It's not personal, it's strategic. Cardelli represents chaos. He doesn't respect the old agreements, doesn't honor the structure that keeps us all profitable. Let him gain power, and we all lose." "Or," Russo interjected, "we let you two tear each other apart and pick up the pieces afterward." The temperature in the room dropped. Arya felt Luca's hand tighten fractionally on his knee, the only sign of his anger. "If you think you can sit this out and profit from my destruction, you're underestimating both me and Cardelli," Luca said quietly. "I'll survive him. The question is whether you'll survive what comes after." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. I'm offering alliance. If you decline, we're competitors. Choose accordingly." The tension ratcheted higher. Marcus leaned forward, breaking it. "I'm in. Cardelli's been making noise about my businesses for months. I'd rather face him with backup than wait for him to come at me alone." "Santoro?" Luca asked. The older man considered. "I'll commit resources to intelligence sharing, but I'm not putting my people on the front lines unless I see proof this alliance benefits us all equally." "That's a start. Russo? Costello?" Russo shrugged. "I'll think about it. Give me 48 hours. Well, Costello was harder to read. "I remember when your father ran things, Luca. He knew how to keep the peace. You sure you're not just stirring up trouble because you're young and restless? It was a direct challenge, the kind designed to test composure. Arya felt Luca's anger like heat beside her, but his voice stayed controlled. My father's way worked for his time. This is my time, and Cardelia is my problem to solve. You want peace? Help me end this quickly. You want chaos? Stay out of it and watch Chicago burn. The meeting continued for another hour, circling around terms and commitments. Arya stayed quiet, observing the way these men negotiated, the subtle threats, the coded language, the constant jockeying for position. It was exhausting and fascinating in equal measure. Finally, they reached an agreement of sorts. Intelligence sharing would start immediately. Material support would be decided within 48 hours based on Cardeli's next move. It wasn't everything Luca wanted, but it was something. As they stood to leave, Russo made his way over to Arya. You held up well in there. Most wives don't come to these meetings. Most wives aren't married to Luca. He laughed. Fair point. Word of advice? Watch your back. Cardeli's smart enough to know that hurting Luca means hurting you. I know. Do you? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Because, from where I'm standing, you look like someone who wandered into a war zone in designer clothes. Pretty, but unprepared. Before Arya could respond, Luca was there, his presence a wall between her and Russo. We're done here, David, unless you have something else to say. Just offering friendly advice? We don't need your advice. We need your commitment. 48 hours. They left, tension radiating from Luca's body as they walked to the car. Once inside, with privacy glass raised between them and the driver, he finally let his control slip. Son of a bitch, he said, voice tight with fury. Russo's playing both sides. I'd bet money he's already talked to Cardeli. You think he'd betray the alliance? I think he'd do whatever benefits him most, which right now might be letting Cardeli and me destroy each other. Luca ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. This is why I hate politics. Give me a straight fight any day. What about the others? Marcus is solid. Santoro will honor his word about intelligence. Costello's old school. He'll wait to see which way the wind blows before committing. He looked at her. How are you? That was intense. I'm okay. Russo's an ass, but I expected that. He was testing you, trying to see if you'd crack under pressure. Did I pass? You were perfect, calm, controlled, exactly what I needed you to be. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. I know that wasn't easy. The touch sent warmth through her chest. It's getting easier. Learning your world. I wish you didn't have to. Why? You said yourself I'm stronger than I look. You are. That's not the issue. He kept her hand in his thumb brushing across her knuckles. The issue is that the stronger you get, the more danger you're in. People will see you as a threat instead of just a target. Good. Let them. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, pride, heat. For a moment, the air between them felt charged with possibilities. Then his phone rang, shattering it. He answered, listened, his face going hard. When? How many? A pause. Lock it down. I'm on my way. He ended the call, already barking instructions to the driver to change course. Cardeli just hit another location, a warehouse on the south side. 3 of our people are dead. Arya's stomach dropped. Another attack? Right after the meeting? It's a message. He's saying he doesn't care about alliances or consequences. He's coming for me regardless. Where are we going? The warehouse. I need to assess the damage, coordinate response. He looked at her. I can have Torres take you home if you want. No, I'm coming. Arya, you said no more keeping me in the dark. I'm coming. The warehouse was in worse shape than the club had been. Fire had gutted half the building, and the air was thick with smoke and chemicals. Emergency vehicles crowded the street, but this time the police presence was minimal. This was clearly a crime scene they wanted to handle quietly. Marco met them at the perimeter, his expression grim. 3 confirmed dead, 2 missing. Cardeli's people came in heavy. Explosives, automatic weapons, the works. This wasn't just a hit, it was a statement. What was stored here, Luca asked. Merchandise for the clubs. Legitimate stuff, mostly, but we had a shipment come in last night that wasn't on the books. What kind of shipment? Marco glanced at Arya, uncertain. Luca followed his gaze, then made a decision. She's cleared. Tell me. Weapons, high-grade military hardware we were moving for the Santoros. Marco's voice dropped. If Cardelli knew about that shipment, if he knew the timing, then we have a leak, Luca finished, his voice deadly quiet. The implications hung heavy. Someone inside Luca's organization was feeding information to Cardelli. Someone close enough to know about secret shipments and protected locations. They spent hours at the scene, Luca coordinating with his people, Arya staying close but out of the way. She watched him work, decisive, focused, the rage he clearly felt channeled into productive action. This was who he was at his core, a man who protected his own, who wouldn't tolerate betrayal, who met violence with calculated force. By the time they got home, it was almost midnight. Luca went straight to his study, making calls, organizing response. Arya brought him coffee and food he didn't eat, hovering uselessly until he finally looked up. You should sleep, he said. So should you. Can't. Not until I figure out who's leaking information. Can I help? No, this is internal. Dangerous. He rubbed his eyes. Arya, go to bed, please. She wanted to argue, but recognized exhaustion when she saw it. In him, in herself. Will you at least try to sleep at some point tonight? Eventually. It wasn't a promise, but it was all she'd get. She started to leave, then turned back. Luca, be careful. Whoever's betraying you, they're close. Close enough to hurt you. I know. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw something that made her breath catch. That's what scares me most. In this life, the people closest to you are the ones who can destroy you. The words felt loaded with meaning beyond the immediate situation. Arya wanted to say something, offer comfort, reassurance, anything, but exhaustion and fear tangled her tongue. Instead, she just nodded and went upstairs, leaving him alone with his suspicions and his rage. She lay awake for hours, listening to the sounds of the house. Footsteps. Low voices. The occasional ring of Luca's phone. Around 3 a.m., she heard him come upstairs, pause outside her door for a long moment, then continue to his own room. Sleep finally came near dawn, troubled and thin. She woke to find another note. Something came up. Stay inside today. We'll explain tonight. L. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Torres and Riley kept her occupied with more training, but Arya's mind was elsewhere, running through scenarios. Who was the leak? How much danger was Luca in? What would Cardelli do next? Jasmine called around noon, her voice tight with worry. Marcus said the meeting yesterday didn't go well, and now there's word about another attack. Girl, you need to be careful. I am being careful. Are you? Because from what I hear, you've been everywhere with Luca lately, making yourself visible. That's brave, but it's also painting a target on your back. I know, but hiding won't make me safer. It'll just make me ignorant. There's a difference between being informed and being in the line of fire. In this world, I'm not sure there is. They talked for a while longer, Jasmine sharing what intelligence Marcus had gathered. Cardelli was getting bolder, more reckless. He'd been seen meeting with people from out of state, possibly bringing in reinforcements. The situation was escalating faster than anyone had anticipated. Luca didn't come home until almost 9 that night. When he walked in, he looked worse than she'd ever seen him. Exhausted, wrung out, barely holding it together. What happened? Arya asked immediately. I found the leak. His voice was hollow. It was Danny, one of my oldest guys, been with me for 8 years. What did you do? What I had to do. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Arya knew what that meant in this world. Justice was swift and final. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Don't be. He made his choice. He knew the consequences. Luca moved to the bar, pouring scotch with hands that shook slightly. But it doesn't make it easier. I trusted him, brought him up through the ranks, and he sold me out for what? Money? Fear? I don't even know. Arya went to him, not touching, but close enough to offer comfort through presence. You did what you had to do. Did I? Or did I just prove Cardelli right, that I'm cold and ruthless and exactly what he's been telling people I am? You're protecting your people, everyone who relies on you. That's not ruthless. That's leadership. He drank the scotch, set down the glass, and finally looked at her. Really looked at her. How are you still here? After everything you've seen, everything I've told you, why haven't you run? Because running won't change anything. And because she paused, choosing her words carefully. Because I'm starting to understand that the man you pretend to be and the man you actually are might not be the same thing. Something cracked in his expression. Before she could process it, he closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to frame her face. I'm about to cross a line, he said, his voice rough. Tell me to stop if you don't want this. She knew what he meant. Knew that once they crossed this line, there was no going back to polite distance and separate bedrooms. Her heart hammered in her chest, fear and want tangled together. Don't stop, she whispered. He kissed her then, and it was nothing like their wedding kiss. This was desperate, raw, weeks of tension and denial breaking through in a rush. His hands moved into her hair, hers gripped his shirt, and for a moment the whole world narrowed to just this. Heat and need, and the shocking realization that she wanted this. Wanted him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. This changes everything, he said. I know. Are you sure? Instead of answering, she kissed him again, and he responded by lifting her, carrying her toward the stairs. They barely made it to his room before the careful control they'd both maintained shattered completely. Later, lying in his bed with his arm around her and her head on his chest, Arya felt the shift between them settle into something real. This wasn't the arrangement anymore. This wasn't strategy or obligation. This was dangerous in an entirely different way. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now? His hand traced patterns on her shoulder. Now Cardelli becomes even more determined to destroy me, because he'll know that you're not just my wife anymore. You're someone I actually care about. Does that scare you? Terrifies me. He pulled her closer, but not enough to let you go. Outside, somewhere in the Chicago night, their enemies were planning. But in that moment, wrapped in each other, Arya and Luca found something they'd both thought impossible. A reason to fight that wasn't just about survival, but about protecting something worth keeping. Morning came too soon and not soon enough. Arya woke wrapped in Luca's arms, his steady breathing against her neck, and for a moment let herself exist in that space between sleep and reality where nothing was complicated. Then his phone buzzed on the nightstand, shattering the illusion. He reached for it without fully waking, muscle memory from years of always being on call. His eyes opened as he read the screen, and she watched his face shift from soft to hard in seconds. What is it? She asked. Cardelli's made his move. He's called for a sit-down. Tonight. Neutral territory. Luca sat up, already reaching for his clothes. He wants to end this. That's good, right? Maybe. Or it's a trap. He pulled on his shirt, his movements sharp with tension. Either way, I have to go. If I refuse, I look weak. If I go, I might not come back. Fear spiked through her chest. Then don't go alone. Take everyone. Make it impossible for him to try anything. That's not how sit-downs work. 2 principles, 2 seconds each. Those are the rules. He turned to look at her, and in his eyes she saw conflict. I need you to stay here. Safe. If this goes wrong, I want to be there. Absolutely not. Luca, Arya, listen to me. He came back to the bed, taking her face in his hands. Last night changed things. I can't think clearly when I'm worried about you. And if Cardelli sees how much you mean to me, he'll use it. Please, stay here. She wanted to argue, wanted to demand her place beside him, but she saw the fear behind his determination, understood that he was trying to protect the one thing he'd let himself care about. Okay, she said finally. But you come back to me. Whatever it takes, you come back. He kissed her then, hard and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. When he pulled away, his voice was rough. I will. I promise. The day was agony. Luca disappeared into his study with Marco and his top people planning. Riley stayed with Arya, running through defensive scenarios that felt too much like worst-case preparations. Torres doubled the security around the house, armed men taking positions in shadows. Around noon, Jasmine showed up unannounced, pushing past Torres with the confidence of someone who knew she'd be let in. Marcus told me about the sit-down, she said, pulling Arya into a fierce hug. I had to check on you. They sat in the living room, coffee cooling between them as Jasmine explained what she knew. The sit-down had been arranged by Thomas Costello, the old-school operator who wanted peace more than he wanted either side to win. It would take place at one of his properties, a restaurant that had been neutral ground for decades. Marcus says it could go either way, Jasmine said. Either they find a way to end this without more bloodshed, or someone doesn't walk out of that room alive. Luca has to go, Arya said quietly. He doesn't have a choice. He always has a choice. He's choosing to go because backing down isn't in his DNA. Jasmine squeezed her hand. But you should know, Marcus has people positioned nearby. If things go wrong, they'll intervene. Luca won't be completely alone. The information settled some of Arya's fear, but not all of it. What if Cardelli doesn't want peace? What if this is just his way of getting Luca in one place? Then Luca's prepared for that too. Your husband didn't survive this long by being stupid or trusting. Jasmine paused. But Arya, you need to prepare yourself. This could end a lot of different ways tonight, not all of them good. After Jasmine left, Arya found herself in Luca's study, surrounded by the evidence of his life. Files on enemies and allies, photographs of locations and people. A whole world of danger and strategy that she'd barely begun to understand. She found a photo buried in one of the drawers. Luca and a man who looked like an older version of him. His father, she guessed. They stood outside this very house, both unsmiling, the weight of their world evident even in a simple photograph. That was taken the day he gave me everything. She turned to find Luca in the doorway, dressed for the meeting in a dark suit that made him look both powerful and vulnerable. Your father? Yeah, 3 days before he died, he called me to this house and told me it was all mine. The business, the responsibilities, the enemies, everything. Luca moved to stand beside her, looking at the photo. I asked him if he ever regretted it, this life. He said regret was a luxury we couldn't afford. Do you believe that? I used to. Now, I'm not sure. He turned to face her fully. Meeting you, marrying you, I thought it would be just another part of the business. Another strategic move. But you made me feel things I thought I'd buried too deep to reach. Luca, let me finish, please. He took her hands. If I don't come back tonight, I need you to know something. What I said on our wedding day about you being a pawn, I was lying. To Marco, to myself, to everyone. Because the truth was, I wanted you the moment I saw you, and that terrified me. Wanting someone in this world is the most dangerous thing you can do. Tears burned in her eyes. You're coming back, you have to. I'm going to try. But if I don't, there's a safe in the bedroom. Code is your birthday. Inside, you'll find everything you need. Money, documents, contacts. Marco will help you disappear if that's what you want. You can have a different life. A safe one. I don't want a different life. I want this one. With you. He pulled her close, holding her like he could protect her from the whole world through sheer force of will. I know I've done this all wrong. The distance. The coldness. Pushing you away when I should have been pulling you closer. But you need to understand, losing you would destroy me. And I can't afford to be destroyed. Not with what's coming. Then don't lose me. Fight for this. For us. I will. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. I love you, Arya. I should have said it sooner, should have shown you instead of hiding behind strategy and fear. But I'm saying it now. I love you. The words broke something open in her chest. I love you too. Which is why you're going to walk into that room, end this war, and come home to me. Because I didn't survive this far to lose you now. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Spoken like a true Vieira. Marco appeared in the doorway. It's time. Luca released her, stepping back. Arya watched him transform, shoulders straightening, expression hardening, the man she loved disappearing behind the mask of the crime boss everyone feared. But before he left, he turned back one more time. Stay safe. Stay here. And Arya, if something happens to me, live. Really live. Don't let this world turn you into something cold and empty. Promise me. I promise. Now go end this. She watched from the window as the cars pulled away, Luca in the lead vehicle with Marco. Torres stayed behind, along with 6 other armed men. The house felt like a fortress and a prison in equal measure. "He'll be fine," Torres said quietly, appearing beside her. "Boss is smart. He doesn't take risks he can't calculate. Everything about tonight is a risk." "Yeah, but he's got more to lose now. That makes him more careful, not less." Arya wanted to believe that. She paced the house, unable to settle, every minute stretching into an eternity. Riley tried to distract her with conversation, but nothing helped. Finally, around 7, her phone rang. Sophia. "Arya, oh, thank God. Have you heard from Papa?" "No, why? What's wrong?" "He left this morning saying he had business. He hasn't answered his phone all day. And Uncle Tony said something about a meeting tonight, something important." Sophia's voice shook. "I'm scared. Something feels wrong." Dread coiled in Arya's stomach. Where was Papa going? He didn't say. Just that it was important, that it would help the family. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. Her father was involved somehow. Either he'd been invited to the sit-down as a witness, or, and this thought made her blood run cold, he was there to betray Luca. "Sophia, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Call Mama and tell her to lock the doors and not let anyone in. Anyone. Then you do the same. I'll call you back when I know more." She hung up and immediately called Luca. It went straight to voicemail. He'd probably silenced everything for the meeting. She tried Marco. Same thing. "Torres!" She ran to find him. "My father's at the sit-down. I don't know why, but he's there." Torres's expression darkened. "That's not good. Salvatore wasn't on the list. What if Cardelli got to him? What if he's using my father against Luca? Then we need to warn them. Now." Torres was already pulling out his phone, making calls. But whoever he was trying to reach wasn't answering. Riley appeared, tactical gear already on. "If we're going in, we need to move fast. The meeting started 20 minutes ago." "We can't go in," Torres said. "Those are sacred rules. We interfere, we start a bigger war. And if we don't interfere and the boss dies, we have no protection from that war anyway." Riley looked at Arya. "Your call, Mrs. Vieira. You're the highest-ranking person here right now." The weight of the decision crashed over her. Breaking the rules of a sit-down was unforgivable in their world. But letting Luca walk into a trap because she'd followed protocol was unthinkable. "We go," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "But we don't enter unless we're sure something's wrong. We position nearby and wait for a signal." Torres nodded. "Smart. Let's move." They took 2 cars, heavily armed, breaking every speed limit to reach Costello's restaurant. The building sat in a quiet industrial area, deliberately isolated. As they pulled up 2 blocks away, Torres pointed out the positions of various guards, Costello's people maintaining the perimeter. "How do we get closer without being spotted?" Arya asked. Riley was already moving. "There's a building across the street, old warehouse. We can get a line of sight from the upper floor." They moved quickly, Torres staying with Arya while Riley and 2 others secured their position. Inside the warehouse, dust motes swirled in the dim light. Riley led them up a rusted staircase to a window that looked directly into the restaurant's private room. Through high windows, Arya could see figures around a table. Luca sat across from Cardelli, Marco beside him. And there, standing near the door, her father. "Can you hear anything?" she whispered. Riley pulled out equipment, aiming a directional microphone at the window. Sound crackled through, voices becoming clear. "Should never have come to this," Costello was saying, his old voice carrying authority. "2 families destroying each other over territory and pride. It's wasteful." "It's not about territory," Luca said, his voice controlled. "It's about respect. Cardelli crossed lines, killed my people. There are consequences." "Consequences?" Cardelli laughed, sharp and cruel. "You think you're in a position to threaten me? Look around, Vieira. You're outnumbered and outmaneuvered." "Am I?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one who called for this meeting. That tells me you're more worried than you want to admit." The temperature in the room shifted. Through the window, Arya saw her father move slightly, his hand going to his jacket. Her blood turned to ice. "Papa's armed," she whispered. "He's going to shoot Luca." Torres swore. "We need to move. Now." "Wait, Riley held up a hand. Look. In the restaurant, Salvatore had drawn his gun, but he wasn't pointing it at Luca. He was pointing it at Cardelli. This ends now, Salvatore said, his voice carrying through the microphone. You came to me 3 months ago, Vincent. Said if I helped you take down Vieira, you'd protect my family. You lied. You've been using us as pawns just like you use everyone. Salvatore, don't be stupid. I'm done being stupid, done being afraid. Her father's hand was steady. You threatened my daughters, said if I didn't cooperate, you'd hurt them. Well, Aria's tougher than either of us gave her credit for. She doesn't need your threats or my protection anymore. So what is this, you switching sides, thinking Vieira will take you back after you betrayed him? I'm not switching sides. I'm ending this. Salvatore looked at Luca. I'm sorry. For everything. For putting my daughter in this position. For being weak when I should have been strong. But I can fix this. I can stop the war. Papa, no! Aria breathed, understanding what he was about to do. In the restaurant, everything happened at once. Salvatore pulled the trigger just as Cardelli's guard moved. The shot went wide, hitting the wall. Return fire erupted. Luca dove for cover, Marco already moving to protect him. Bodies collided, gunfire echoing. Go, Riley shouted, already running down the stairs. They burst from the warehouse, weapons drawn. Costello's guards tried to stop them, but Torres took them down with efficient precision. Inside the restaurant was chaos. Cardelli's people and Luca's people in a firefight, furniture destroyed, glass shattering. Aria spotted her father on the ground, bleeding. She ran to him, sliding to her knees beside him. Papa! Aria? No, you shouldn't be here. He coughed, blood on his lips. I'm sorry, baby. I thought I was protecting you, but I just made everything worse. Don't talk. We'll get you help. She pressed her hands against the wound in his chest, trying to stop the bleeding. Nearby, Luca fought hand-to-hand with one of Cardelli's men. He was vicious and precise, every movement lethal. When the man went down, Luca's eyes found Aria across the chaos. Get her out of here, he shouted to Torres. But Aria wasn't leaving. Not with her father dying, not with the man she loved still in danger. She pulled her father's gun from where it had fallen, her hand shaking but her aim steady. All those training sessions with Riley suddenly vital. Cardelli emerged from behind an overturned table, his own weapon raised, pointed directly at Luca's back. Aria didn't think. She raised the gun and fired. The recoil shocked through her arms. Cardelli staggered, his shot going wild. He turned toward her, surprise and fury on his face. Before he could aim again, Luca was on him, the two men grappling for the weapon. They crashed against a wall, both fighting for control. Cardelli was larger, but Luca was faster, channeling weeks of rage and fear into pure violence. The gun skittered away across the floor. Luca's fist connected with Cardelli's jaw once, twice, again, until the other man collapsed. Silence fell over the room, broken only by ragged breathing and distant sirens. Bodies littered the floor, some moving, some not. Costello stood in the corner, hands raised, looking older and more tired than Aria had ever seen him. It's done, Luca said, his voice hollow. It's finally done. Marco appeared, bloodied but alive. We need to go. Police are 3 minutes out. Luca looked at Aria, then at her father. Understanding crossed his face. He moved to kneel beside Salvatore, checking his pulse. He's alive, barely. Torres, call our doctor. Have him meet us at the safe house. Oh, Luca, you don't have to... Aria started. He's your father. He tried to stop this. That counts for something. Luca stood, pulling her to her feet. We move. Now. They evacuated quickly, Torres and Riley carrying Salvatore while Luca kept Aria close. Behind them, Cardelli's people scattered, leaderless and broken. Costello would handle the police. He always did. The safe house was an apartment in a nondescript building, its existence known to only Luca's most trusted people. The doctor arrived within 15 minutes, immediately working on Salvatore. Aria sat beside her father's makeshift bed, holding his hand while the doctor extracted the bullet and stitched him closed. He'll live, the doctor said finally. He's lost a lot of blood, but the bullet missed anything vital. He needs rest and antibiotics, but he should recover. Relief flooded through her. Luca stood in the doorway watching. When the doctor left, he came in, his presence heavy with everything unsaid. Thank you, Aria said quietly, for saving him. You saved me first, I think that makes us even. He touched her face gently, his fingers coming away with someone else's blood. You fired a gun at a man tonight. Killed him, probably. Are you okay? She thought about it. About the weight of the trigger, the recoil, the way Cardelli had looked at her. I don't know, but I'd do it again to protect you. That's what scares me. How easily this world changes us. He pulled her close, holding her like she was something precious and breakable. I almost lost you tonight. When I saw you in that restaurant in the middle of the gunfire, my heart stopped. I couldn't stay away, not when I knew you were in danger. I know, and that's exactly why I love you. He pulled back enough to look at her. But we need to make changes. Real ones. I can't keep living like this, always one bullet away from dying, not now that I have something worth living for. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe it's time to step back. Let Marco handle more of the operations. Focus on the legitimate businesses. Distance ourselves from the violence. His voice was steady, determined. I can't promise it'll be safe. I'll still have enemies, but it'll be safer than what we've been doing. Hope bloomed in her chest. You'd really do that? For you? For the chance at a real life together? Yeah, I would. He kissed her softly. Cardelli's gone. His organization will fracture. The other families saw what happens when you come at me. We have breathing room now. Time to rebuild differently. Over the next few days, the full picture emerged. Cardelli was dead, killed by the combination of Arya's shot and his own people's friendly fire in the chaos. His second-in-command had surrendered immediately, pledging loyalty to whoever would take them. The Santoros had absorbed most of Cardelli's territory. The Hayes family had brokered peace agreements, and Luca, through strategic generosity and careful negotiation, had come out stronger than before. Salvatore recovered slowly. When he was finally conscious and coherent, Arya sat beside his bed and listened to his confession. Cardelli had approached him months ago, threatening to destroy the Morettis unless Salvatore cooperated. Her father had fed information, made introductions, helped set up attacks, all while telling himself it was to protect his family. I was wrong, he said, his voice weak. I was a coward who made everything worse. I don't expect forgiveness. You tried to stop it at the end, Arya said. You stood up when it mattered. I nearly got you killed. But you didn't, and now you get to spend the rest of your life making it right. She squeezed his hand. Luca's giving you a choice. You can retire, take Mama and Sophia somewhere safe and quiet, or you can work for him, legitimately, helping with the restaurant businesses he's expanding. Her father looked shocked. After everything I did? He says everyone deserves a second chance, as long as they earn it. Salvatore chose the restaurants. Within a month, he was managing 3 of Luca's legitimate properties, using his decades of experience to turn them profitable. The Moretti family slowly rebuilt, this time on honest foundations. Arya and Luca settled into a new rhythm. He kept his promise, delegating the dangerous operations to Marco while focusing on legitimate expansion. There were still threats. Their world would always have threats, but they faced them together. 3 months after Cardelli's death, Arya discovered she was pregnant. She told Luca over dinner in their dining room, the same room where they'd sat in hostile silence those first weeks. His reaction was everything she'd hoped for and nothing she'd expected. He went completely still, his fork halfway to his mouth, his eyes locked on hers. Say that again, he whispered. I'm pregnant. About 8 weeks, the doctor thinks. He stood so fast his chair fell over. Then he was pulling her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. When he pulled back, there were tears in his eyes. I never thought, I didn't dare hope. He couldn't finish the sentence. Instead, he kissed her, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. That night, they lay in bed talking about the future, names they liked, what kind of parents they wanted to be, how to raise a child in their world without letting that world destroy the child's innocence. I want our daughter to be strong, Arya said, her hand on her still flat stomach. Strong enough to survive this life, but soft enough to actually live it. Daughter? Luca smiled. You think it's a girl? I know it is. Call it mother's intuition. He kissed her stomach gently. Then our daughter will be the most protected, most loved child in Chicago. And when she's old enough, we'll teach her to protect herself, to be smart and strategic and strong, like her mother. The months passed in a blur of preparation and transformation. Luca converted one of the guest rooms into a nursery, personally overseeing every detail. The house that had felt so cold and empty slowly filled with warmth. Family dinners with the Morettis, game nights with Marco and his girlfriend, visits from Jasmine and Marcus and their kids. Aria's pregnancy progressed smoothly despite her initial fears. Riley taught her modified self-defense techniques. Torres installed additional security measures. Luca hovered, overprotective and endearing in his constant worry. "You're driving me crazy," Aria said one afternoon when he'd checked on her for the 5th time in an hour. "I can't help it. You're carrying the most important thing in my life." "Things, plural. I'm also important." "You're not important. You're essential. There's a difference." She went into labor on a Tuesday night, 3 days before her due date. Luca drove to the hospital like a man possessed, running red lights while Marco called ahead to ensure everything was ready. He held her hand through every contraction, whispered encouragement when she wanted to give up, cried openly when their daughter was finally born. Elena Vieira came into the world at 3:47 a.m., weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces with dark hair and her father's eyes. She was perfect and screaming in absolutely everything. Luca held her with shaking hands, this man who'd killed without hesitation, who commanded respect through fear, reduced to tears by 8 pounds of helpless human. "She's so small," he whispered, awed. "She's perfect," Aria said, exhausted and elated. "She's everything." He looked up, his eyes meeting Aria's. "You're everything. How did I get this lucky?" "You didn't. We earned it. We fought for it. We survived for it." Over the next few days, their room filled with visitors. Sophia, crying happy tears while holding her niece. Salvatore and Angela, their faces showing pride and relief that their daughter had found happiness despite everything. Marco, uncomfortable but gentle with the baby. Jasmine, offering advice and humor in equal measure. When they finally brought Elena home, Torres and the security team had transformed the house into a fortress disguised as a home. Guards positioned strategically, systems monitored constantly. But inside, surrounded by family and love, it felt safe. Aria stood in the nursery one night, 3 weeks after bringing Elena home, watching Luca rock their daughter to sleep. He was singing softly, something Italian his mother had sung to him, his voice rough but tender. This was the man who'd called her a pawn on their wedding day, the man who'd pushed her away out of fear, the man who'd learned to open his heart despite every instinct telling him it was dangerous. "What are you thinking?" he asked, noticing her watching. "That we've come so far from where we started." "Yeah, we have." He stood carefully, placing Elena in her crib. "Do you regret it? Any of it? The violence? The fear? The nights wondering if you'd come home?" "Yeah, I regret those parts." She moved to stand beside him, looking down at their sleeping daughter. "But this? Us? Elena? Never." He pulled her close, and they stood together in the dim nursery, watching their daughter sleep. Outside, Chicago sprawled in all its complexity, danger and beauty, violence and hope, the world they'd both been born into and couldn't escape. But inside this room, this house, this life they'd built from the ashes of a forced marriage, there was peace, hard-won and carefully protected, but real. "I love you," Luca said quietly. "I know I say it all the time now, but I need you to hear it. Need you to know that every single day I wake up amazed that you chose to stay, that you chose me." "I chose us," Aria corrected. "Both of us. Together. That's what makes it worth it." Elena stirred in her sleep, making small sounds. They watched her, this tiny person who represented everything they'd fought for, everything they'd become. The girl who'd walked down the aisle to marry a stranger was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd learned to navigate impossible situations, who'd fired a gun to save the man she loved, who'd transformed from invisible to essential. The man who'd seen marriage as a transaction had learned that the most valuable things couldn't be bought or strategized. They had to be built day by day, choice by choice, with honesty and vulnerability and trust. Neither of them was perfect. Their world was still dangerous, still complicated, still full of threats they'd have to face. But they'd face them together, as partners, as equals, as two people who'd found something real in the middle of chaos. And that, Arya thought, as Luca's arms tightened around her, was worth every painful step of the journey. Years later, when Elena was old enough to ask about how they met, Arya would tell her the truth, that sometimes the best things in life come from the hardest beginnings. That strength isn't about never being afraid, it's about being afraid and choosing to be brave anyway. That love isn't always easy or simple, but it's always worth fighting for. Luca would add that sometimes the person you need isn't the person you thought you wanted, that opening your heart is the scariest and most important thing you can do. That being vulnerable takes more courage than any violence ever could. And together, they'd show their daughter that even in the darkest worlds, even in the most impossible situations, two people who choose each other, who fight for each other, who refuse to give up on each other, they can build something beautiful, something lasting, something worth everything it cost to create. In the quiet of the nursery, with their daughter sleeping peacefully and the Chicago night settling around them, Arya and Luca stood together. No longer the reluctant bride and the cold groom, no longer strangers bound by obligation, but partners, equals. Two souls who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something neither could have imagined. And that was its own kind of victory, the most important kind.